Hello and welcome to Gone Kayaking. I'm Clayton.
And I'm Darren.
And this is our 2-day trip around the Isle of Wight. I say our, I wasn't actually involved with this, was I? It was you, Captain Chris and Duncan. Unfortunately, I couldn't make it despite having done all the training. And looking at it, I'm not the best person to get up early anyway, but it really was an early start, wasn't it?
It was. We started at 4:30, which got us around the Needles with a slack tide.
And that's quite important, isn't it? The tide is massively important in that beginning part of the journey.
Yes, it meant we had the tide working with us to get to the Needles and working with us again once we got around it, and it gives us much more predictable conditions once we're actually there at the Needles, which can get lumpy.
Now, plenty of planning gone into this and deciding to do it. At what point was there no turning back?
Really, once you leave Hurst Castle, anything beyond that would have been against the tide, so changing your mind any point after that would have been hard work.
Yeah, it's not exactly a case of, let's just take the next exit, go on the roundabout and come home. It's going to be slightly more difficult. Now, I know that the pictures don't look great, but it was very dark, wasn't it? But still, it was worth keeping in because it was such a special moment.
Exactly. I've paddled to and around the Needles a lot, but this is the first time I've seen them by starlight.
So what was the purpose of the trip?
Really just to enjoy it. It was the first time we'd been around, so a lot of new aspects for us.
And what are the main things you had to take into account on a trip like this?
The weather's critical. There's a lot of parts of this, especially along here. After passing the Needles, there's about 3 miles or so with no option to get out or change your mind.
And by that you mean no option to get out the boat and get on the island, is there?
Exactly. There's nowhere to land. The cliff drops straight into the sea, so you can't decide you don't like it.
So it's 3 miles of solid paddling, but what a view. We talked about that earlier, but the sun's coming up and it's quite spectacular, isn't it?
Yep, it's absolutely spectacular, and it's not very often that you get all the conditions right in the sun just like this.
What's that noise on your boat?
That would be creaky rudder lines, possibly through lack of maintenance.
Tusk. Now, one of the things that you have to be aware of when you're in the Solent is the fact where we are down here in the south that there's very different currents and things going on. But once you're out of that and come around the island, it's a very different situation again, isn't it?
The main thing is being really exposed. You have nothing really between you and the bigger waves and the wind coming in from the main channel.
There's another element as well. When you're planning this, you were saying you made a list of all the tides and the times, but they don't actually cater for you being this close to the land, do they?
No, this is true. We can see the flow, the tidal flows that we see in the almanacs and the likes, or on the main charts, but they don't really give the resolution that you need.
So on the map, the 3 miles coming around the Needles, past Henderson's Cross, Chalk Cliffs, and the first point at which you can get in is at Freshwater Bay, and you took that opportunity to do so. What was the importance of coming in at Freshwater?
We came in at Freshwater to get rid of dry jackets and the cold gear because the sun was coming up. We were soon going to start boiling in the sun.
Yeah, Captain Chris didn't do that though, did he?
No, Captain Chris managed to leave his on and regretted it a little bit later when the sun did come up in earnest.
And of course, being the friendly group that we all are, you didn't stop again to allow him to take it off, did you?
No.
So that was it. Now, so obviously come in, take the jackets off, and then a little bit of prep for the next part of the leg. What was going on there from Freshwater? Where'd you go next?
Next is along Atherfield Bay, pretty much a straight line down that part of the coast. There's not a lot to see, still very beautiful obviously. There are some rocks actually, even way off the coast you can see some rocks breaking through the surface, which probably around Atherfield Ledge. We obviously didn't have the charts right there in front of us as we were paddling.
How important is having the compass on your kayak?
Really, with these conditions following the coastline, not very. It's better for crossing the channel and trying to keep a straight line across the tide flows.
Still looks pretty cool, doesn't it? And I must admit, I've got one now, so I'm quite looking forward to putting mine in the boat. But that aside, a little bit of chop.
This was a little bit of chop. So St Catherine's Point was an interesting point of the trip. To get the tide perfect for us at the Needles meant we had the tide in full flood as we came to St Catherine's. And we really didn't know what to expect. All the stories of doom and shipwrecks and pirates and the likes. So really weren't that sure. So here we are, and it was actually, with the conditions, it was perfect.
And how bad could this have got?
Can get really bad. We had a light tailwind coming with us. We had the tide flowing with us. And if the wind had been in the opposite direction or a little bit stronger, then things can get quite rough.
Coming around to the lighthouse, that signal DGBS. Now, there's a lot of interesting numbers here on this chart, and to some people watching, be like, "What does it mean?" And including me in that, actually. What's going on?
We can see the differences in the depths as you're going along the coast there. So you're ranging from 40 odd metres up to 15, 13 metres in different areas. So that creates a lot of turbulence on the surface.
And that does affect us because we are just sat on the surface, aren't we?
We are on the surface, so definitely once you've got the tide going over there, you get some turbulence, and then add to that some extra wind, then things can change quickly.
So the next pull-in point was where?
This is now Woody Bay, where Captain Chris lost his boat briefly.
Now that tells there's a little lesson to be had in this, isn't there?
It's really about not getting caught with your pants down behind the rock there.
And also, luckily, you were already out in the water, so he didn't have to get wet.
This is true.
So you spared him his blushes, but didn't spare him being caught with his pants down. And again, a fantastic day. You couldn't have picked the weather, could you, if you tried? I mean, it's been brilliant.
It's absolutely gorgeous. And this was this Woody Bay. I'd never heard of it. I used to live on the Isle of Wight even, but it was gorgeous. Could have been a little beach in Croatia, beautiful clear blue sea. I remember being able to see every rock as you come in, despite being 30 odd feet of water.
Next part of the journey, where are you aiming to get to and by what time?
Well, the idea is to get around to Bembridge, St Helens, where we were to spend the night, but ultimately we ran out of tide helping us as we came into Sandown Bay. So rather than cross the bay, we opted to go into the beach around by the pier and had a siesta and a bowl of chips.
And Captain Chris, as you may have noticed, those of you watching this, he's actually got his captain's hat on, and he is indeed and was a captain, wasn't he? We're not just giving him that moniker for the sake of it.
He's the real deal, captain of a kayak.
He is now, but give credit to him. What did he used to do?
He used to drive container ships.
Yeah, that's pretty impressive. Although his ability to drive kayaks at times is far less accomplished. Having pulled into Sandown, as you say, for your siesta, a little snooze and some chips. It wasn't where you're going to spend the night because the tide wasn't helping. You didn't want to fight it. But eventually get round into Bembridge, and that's where you wanted to stop the night, wasn't it?
Yep, exactly. So we crept out of Sandown just before the tide actually turned to help us. So we managed to weasel around past Culver Cliff and then came across past Bembridge and got into St Helens, probably around the low tide.
And how was the evening?
It was gorgeous.
Anything that people need to consider spending a night on the beach?
Well, as we found out completely by accident through our immense planning, there's actually a campsite right there, so we could have actually done the real deal and booked a night in a proper campsite, but we didn't. We crashed on the beach. We had no problem there. The tide doesn't come right up to the seawall, which was fortunate.
So after a good night's sleep, ready for day 2, and what was the plan?
We managed a little head start, so we got away before the tide had actually turned round in our direction, which was good, so it got us away a little bit earlier. Come across Ryde Sands, which obviously Ryde Sands come nearly a mile off the beach, so you're in a few inches of water even well off the beach. And for the first time in my life I had to slow down to give way to a hovercraft, which I've never done before. And straight after the hovercraft we've got Ryde Pier to look at, which it comes about half a mile off the shore, so it's a little detour we weren't that interested in, and there's also a fast ferry that runs from the end of it, which we also didn't really want to get involved with. It turns out we can actually go straight under the pier, the structure's fine for that.
Well, that saves a bit of time, doesn't it, and effort?
Exactly, and saves arguing with another fast ferry.
So through the pier and on to the next part of the journey.
Yep, more ferries. These are the Fishbourne to Portsmouth ones.
Got to give way to them, and then a really nice part of the journey, but one actually you're not allowed to stop here, are you?
A little bit. There's Osborne House there, the Queen's Isle of Wight residence. There are signs all along saying no landing, etc. So we may have stopped for a little lunch break along there.
Perfectly normal.
Absolutely. And we did make a new friend as we came into the bay.
Yeah, plenty of wildlife, isn't there, around and in the Solent, and it's always fascinating if you can get to see it. And you were really lucky because you met the seal.
We did meet the seal. He was right there as we came up to the bay, as you can see here, just standing guard so you don't actually land on the no landing beach. And after we'd had our lunch, he was still there, and he came up really close for some personal one-on-one time.
Well, he wanted to see your boarding cards, didn't he?
I think so. That was probably it.
Amazing. And I am so jealous because I have never seen a seal in real life when I've been out kayaking, and you guys, you've seen just about everything. It's not fair. So moving swiftly on to the next part of the journey.
We're passing Cows now on the left. You can see the chimneys off to the right from Forley.
So from here it's just pretty much a straight slep across, isn't it, to get back. Job done.
We did follow the coast a bit. We stayed with the main channel, so we get slightly more assistance from the tide as we come along in the main channel on the Isle of Wight side, and we tend to cross as we get back towards Newtown. It saves you getting hoovered back out through Hurst into the English Channel again.
What were the main lessons then that you learned from the 2-day trip?
Really, that the planning and the weather can make or break it. We had the weather, as you can see, absolutely perfect, and it could really have changed things quite significantly if we didn't.
And also, it's not quite as easy as you think, is it? Because there was training that went into this. It wasn't just a case of let's go for 2 days around the Isle of Wight.
This is true. We're all fairly experienced paddlers, but we'd not done this particular circumnavigation, and we'd not done a 2-day one before. But we did build up to it, specifically during the summer of this, and we were paddling from Keyhaven, which is really our home port, out across to Newtown and back. We went to Cows and back, for instance. We were putting in some big miles to make sure we were ready for it.
And I was part of that as well, everybody. I did do the training, but unfortunately didn't get to do the trip itself. Busy working, didn't want me to go. Yeah. I did. I'm desperate to do it next time. A challenge for you for next time?
I would love to do it in a day. It depends who I'm with, really. I'm not sure many of my colleagues are very interested in doing it in a day, so maybe I'll be doing that on my own sometime.
I am, but I think it might be more of a hindrance than a help. But it was a brilliant trip, and it's always great, and it's to tick stuff off the bucket list.
Yep, definitely, and there's plenty more to do.
There you have it, the Isle of Wight circumnavigated by kayak in just 2 days. We hope you enjoyed the video. Please feel free to press like and subscribe to our channel if you haven't already done so. There will be plenty more videos to come. For now though, from us, it's time to say goodbye. We wish you all the best on the water and safe paddling.